Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 25th day of September, now 2021. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, hosting today's show. Up first, no watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere around the state today. The interior looking good on up to the Arctic coast, southeast Alaska. Nothing going on. And we've got a storm coming into the Aleutians tonight and tomorrow, but only gale force winds associated with that for marine warnings, gale warnings, but no public warnings. And from there, moving to satellite imagery, you can see a band of clouds there along the west coast from the northern Bering Sea, Seward Peninsula, on down to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. But you can see in the last few frames they're really falling apart east of the Perbolos from what it looks like to begin with. You can see it just really dissipating and stretched out northerly flow carrying moisture southward, southerly flow carrying it northward. And that around high pressure that's built into the southwest interior, into the mid-Yukon River Valley areas, they're kind of blocking that weak system out. And then cirrus from the next storm arriving over the western Aleutians. Mid and high level clouds. Not a bad day out over the Aleutians today. Some clearing and very isolated shower activity. Showers ending over the eastern Aleutians today. So a light shower at mid-afternoon on Alaska. And St. Paul, St. George picked up about a third of an inch of precipitation with that system there, with west-northwest winds gusting 30 miles an hour. Nikolsky had gusts to 45 miles an hour, and in Alaska about 40 miles an hour. So a little bit of wind with that system, more of a wind than rain producer. And another third of an inch on the moisture up over the Bering Strait fell at Tin City today, but Nome only had about a hundredth of an inch. So a pretty narrow band of somewhat heavier rainfall with that, and it all fell in the form of rain there. Light snow showers fell over the eastern interior today. Fairbanks picked up a little bit of new snow, but it was very light, less than a half inch, if even that. And that extended down into the northern Copper River Basin. Some lingering showers over the Kenai Peninsula trending to end, and still clouds, but showery conditions over the Panhandle today, with 0.2 of an inch falling. Same thing on the North Gulf Coast. Cordova picking up 0.2 of an inch, and Gustavos 0.2 of an inch. Down to the south, much lighter, and you even see some clearing down there around Heidelberg, Annette, Metlakatla area today, with some sunshine this afternoon. Even more sunshine there along the southwest coast, clearing out pretty good, extending up into the central interior today. And Kodiak Island becoming mostly sunny and dry there, with light winds and flurries along the eastern Arctic coast, but nothing significant. And the next front out there to the west tonight will push into the western Aleutians and bring possible gale force winds and definitely rain for sure. Rain and clouds, IFR flying conditions there. High pressure shifts eastward to the central Aleutians, Bering Sea, and still some light rain and fog and drizzle for the Pribilof Islands, with a couple of weak troughs, that leftover moisture dropping down, some of that coming over the top of that ridge, but nothing heavy. And fair and dry over southern Alaska, with light winds for the most part. Chance of showers possible for Kodiak Island, kind of swings in there from the east, just a risk, and that should clear back out tomorrow. And also a chance of showers, that low center that today is south of the Queen Charlotte. You can see pushes northward, but it heads east of the southern Panhandle, so close enough though, keep a chance of rain in over the southern areas tonight. Otherwise central northern areas dry and increasing clearing. Lingering snow showers eastern interior, chance of snow over the northwest, light snow. And then moving on to Sunday, showers central and southern southeast coast. Best chance actually in the south. That's really just a slight threat there for the central areas. And lingering snow showers over the eastern interior, mostly sunny central interior, and especially southern Alaska there at Kodiak Island, picking up a northwest wind, clearing it out, pushing those clouds well to the south. Gale force winds coming into the central Aleutians there. as that low center hangs up near Chimay-Attu. High pressure edging eastward, but not too strong there north of, say, from the Yukon Delta. Kind of weak westerly flow continues to carry surges of moisture into the west coast areas. And looking ahead to Monday, that system pushes eastward there across the Bering Sea, bringing rain and wind from eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula into the Bristol Bay area and in toward Kodiak Island late in the afternoon, southwest Kodiak Island. Otherwise, increasing clouds there. Winds will remain light. Mostly sunny southern Alaska, mostly sunny eastern interior and dry. Light winds, chance of snow flurries or showers there. Kobuk Valley, lower Koyukuk. Maybe the Bering Strait, central Arctic coast, chance of showers, southern panhandle, due to that low near the Queen Charlottes. Lows tonight, 20s, interior southern Alaska to lower 30s along the coast, up Kodiak near 40, upper 30s to mid 40s for the panhandle. Highs tomorrow in the 50s for the southeast coast, near 50 coastal areas there. Kodiak Island lower 50s, otherwise 40 to 50 over the interior. And then lows the following morning down into the teens, mid-teens, Copper River Basin, some areas colder, and 20 to 30 for south central Alaska, 20s, Kuskokwim Valley, Bristol Bay, lows in the 40s to lower 50s for the panhandle. Highs pushing 60 Prince of Wales Island on Monday afternoon, otherwise upper 30s to lower 50s elsewhere. Lows 5 to 15 north slope into the Brooks Range, otherwise 20s. Lower 30s out west. Highs lower 40s Bering Strait, Seward Peninsula into the central interior, upper 20s to lower 30s north slope and Arctic coast. Lows in the lower to mid 20s Arctic coast, 5 to 15 north slope Brooks Range, and in the 20s south of the Brooks Range. Highs upper 30s to lower 40s over the interior and on out to the southwest. Lows upper 30s, lower 40s tonight, and highs upper 40s to lower 50s, followed by lows in the 40s for the most part, a little warmer out west, and then highs lower 50s.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to the first line weather graphic here for Sunday morning. IFR there, central Arctic coast. Marginal VFR, west and northwest interior there near the Yukon River on up, down to Nunivak Island, northern Bering Sea marginal, but big area VFR, central Bering Sea, Adak, eastward, right up the Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay and eastward there across much of the Kuskokwim Valley to the Kenai Peninsula, and then northward up to the Koyukuk maybe and western Yukon Flats area of the Brooks Range. VFR along the North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle, IFR along and north of the eastern Alaska Range there, and coming into the western Aleutians with the next system. That spreads eastward to Adak and Atka on Sunday afternoon with marginal VFR, northern Bering Sea, area of VFR out there getting a little, starting to get pinched off. Pribilof still looking good throughout the day tomorrow, VFR at least through the afternoon. And same thing for Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula, southern Alaska, lingering marginal VFR possible in the Coast Range there, northeast of Valdez and the Wrangell Mountains, otherwise east side looking good. IFR along or just off the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, so marginal VFR over the central Panhandle. Monday morning, IFR comes in right into the central interior, up to the Alaska Range, and then areas of IFR back out to the west, becoming VFR, Kuskokwim Bay, Bristol Bay, and Kodiak Island, with some marginal VFR into western Cook Inlet, but the inlet itself, Kenai Peninsula, Matanuska Valley, looking pretty good, as well as the eastern interior, just areas of marginal VFR. Marginal VFR, Arctic Coast North Slope, and IFR, Central Panhandle, followed by some marginal VFR, but to the north of that, VFR. And for Monday afternoon, just some marginal VFR, Eastern Panhandle, otherwise good VFR, Southern Alaska from the Gulf there, Kodiak Island, right up into the central interior. Northern Alaska, marginal VFR, IFR, Eastern Beaufort Sea coast, marginal VFR, Southwest coast, all the Bering Sea, all of the Aleutians, all the Alaska Peninsula. And for passes, Anatuvik looking good tomorrow, VFR, same forecast for Adigan, VFR either approach, and Lake Clark and Merrill, pretty good Sunday. Mostly clear skies, resulting in VFR flying for both entrances on both passes. Rainy, same forecast, VFR. Windy, VFR. And VFR kind of day for Isabel as well. Mentasta could start out marginal and then become VFR. And for Tanita, good VFR. Portage, VFR. Chilcoot and White, same forecast, VFR. Moving on to the freezing levels. Tomorrow morning at the surface there, down to the Alaska Range, Copper River Basin, and free air freezing level at 2,000 feet there up north across Norton Sound, and then down south of Kodiak into the northern Panhandle, 4 to 8,000 foot freezing level, central western Aleutians, 2 to 4,000 feet for the southeast coast. And for icing, system coming into the Aleutians, moving east-northeast. So some considerable moderate rime icing pulling into the central Aleutians during the day, improving back to the west. Icing free over much of Alaska, kind of an elevated threat there. Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, of real isolated moderate, probably just mostly light rime or mixed up in that area there in the northwest, and then rime icing possible over the southern Panhandle. Jet stream showing west to northwest flow, 65 to 95 knots across the Bering Sea, picks up to northwest 110 knots across the Alaska Peninsula, and 70 to 95 knot winds with a low pressure area farther to the west. Otherwise, main jet now well south of the Panhandle, 9,000 feet. Northeast 20 knots, Cook Inlet, pick up to 40 knots, especially strongest winds early in the day there, Kodiak Island, slowly diminishing. And then 25 to 30 knot or 20 to 30 knot west-southwest winds there into the northwest interior north slope. Westerlies 25 across the St. Lawrence Island area, and then stronger winds with a low over the Aleutians, 50 with a 70 knot wind south of the chain. And at 3,000 feet, 60 to 65 knot winds in advance of that front as it pushes in across the Adak and Atka, northwest 60, but that's south of Shimia, and 20 to 30 knot winds there, Kodiak Island, Alaska Peninsula, and winds on the increase southern Panhandle. Otherwise, turbulence tomorrow, Fox Islands, considerable moderate, below 4,000 feet, and everywhere else pretty smooth. And after the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts and other interesting information.
When I first started working here in the early 90s, this is where the glacier was. I mean, where we're walking right now would have been a pile of gravel that had been pushed up by the glacier, and then we would have had 100 to 200 foot high cliffs of ice right here. And as you can see, that's changed quite a bit. And if you look at that in 2 dimensions, you can sort of see the terminus used to be here, now it's back there. That gives you one measure. What that kind of 2-dimensional look doesn't show is how much mass has been lost, that the glacier has just sort of deflated. These 200-foot cliffs of ice have disappeared and pulled back to this gentle sloping glacier you see now.
When I was working in Kenai Fjords National Park, I used the topographic maps to navigate where I was, and I realized that the mapping of the glaciers was really off. The glaciers had receded a lot. There were new rivers and lakes that were establishing where the ice used to be or should have been according to the maps. And so then I did a study on this and found out that we had a 5% loss of glacier ice mass in the Kenai Fjords area between 1950 and 1985. Big change.
You know, one of the most compelling things we do, though, to document glacier change is simply take photographs. We've had repeat photography projects here at the park. They may not give you the most accurate data in terms of how much mass or real specific measurements, but what they do give you is a visual representation that can't be argued with. I mean, it really requires no interpretation.
Understanding what's happening, understanding these processes, and possibly being able to predict what's going to happen in the future is the best that we can do, and that requires science and research.
There's considerable research on climate change in Alaska. The most significant, I would say right now, is the Natural Resources Inventory and Monitoring Program, which is looking at change across a wide variety of vital signs or indicators.
Kenai Fjords National Park is actually a pretty good representation of what's going on globally with regards to glacier ice retreat. There have been studies showing that mountain glaciers are retreating all over the planet. There are probably well over 90% of the glaciers are in retreat status. There are a few that are advancing and some are holding their terminus point. But at Kenai Fjords, the tidewater glaciers are retreating more dramatically, but even the land-based glaciers in the terminus positions are retreating. It's pretty common for all the mountain glaciers. The big mountain glaciers in Wrangell St. Elias National Park, they're mostly in retreat too. We're really entering an interesting phase where what we call the cryosphere, the ice on the planet, is melting.
You know, in the more immediate past, it's clear that since the Pleistocene, glaciers have been retreating. So the idea that glaciers retreat is nothing, is no revelation. They've been retreating from across North America for the last 10,000 years. What appears to have changed and what has people's attention is the rate at which they're retreating. In the case of Exit Glacier, you know, we have scientists who've been looking at it. We have evidence that the glaciers left behind, where we can track that retreat for about the last 200 years. And we can say with confidence that in the last decade, that rate has increased.
Terminus mapping is a great way to map a small portion of the ice field. We come out twice a year and we use a GPS to walk the edge of the terminus and map the farthest extent of Exit Glacier. And that allows us to see what type of changes are occurring over the winter accumulation period and the summer ablation period. With that data, that can help us as we witness these changes within the ice field, we can hopefully be able to correlate that with the weather data that we have.
You know, when you look at an ice field that's 750 square miles, when you look at a glacier that towers hundreds of feet high, you get a sense of permanence. You think these things are massive, they're somehow a permanent sort of feature, and yet in a very short period of time, in a matter of a couple of decades, we've seen dramatic change in those things.
At Exit Glacier, we have a time-lapse camera set up on the glacier that allows us to take a couple photos every single day, and then to put that sequence of photos into a video where we can see changes of the glacier and the vegetation phenology throughout an entire year.
Virtually all the glaciers in Alaska are receding. Some glaciers are moving forward. That's not an indication that they're actually growing in size. It's just the rate at which they're slipping down the mountain.
In some cases, some of these glaciers are receding back up onto land, and so they're producing less ice. When you change the glacier systems, you're changing habitat for marine mammals and other wildlife. And the populations of harbor seals have dropped dramatically in the fjords. In 1980, shortly after the establishment of the park, in Island Bay, we had maybe 1,500 harbor seals. Nowadays, you know, it's a few hundred.
In Arctic environments, much of the sunlight that reaches the Earth bounces back because it hits snow and reflects off into space, or ice on the ocean and reflects off into space. That's the albedo effect. When the snow thaws and instead you have rock or vegetation, or when the ice thaws and you have transparent ocean, the sunlight will convert to other wavelengths that'll convert essentially to warmth. That does not bounce back into the atmosphere as much. So consequently, you get a warming of the ocean, you get a warming of the ground, you get a thawing of frozen soils or permafrost, you get a more rapid thawing of sea ice. So once the ice and once the snow is off of the surface, the rate of warming increases considerably.
If you're driving out to Exit Glacier, you'll actually start to see signs along the side of the road that have dates on them. Visitors sometimes are confused. They think they're elevations or something until they get up to the glacier and realize, oh, those were all date signs along the road that were telling me when the glacier was there. Another thing that's been happening in the Exit Glacier area in recent years is this flooding that comes at a time we're not used to. We're used to having maybe some flooding in the fall when we have a lot of heavy rain. This has suddenly been some flooding that's coming in the middle of the summer, usually not associated with precipitation events. It's associated with warmer weather and melting. When you walk down one of our trails that leads to Exit Glacier, there are a number of ways to get out there, but what used to be the main route is no longer really the main route because of the way the glacier has changed. So this main route to the glacier used to provide dramatic views of the glacier as you walk towards it. In fact, there was a large kiosk built at the end of this trail for people to stop and rest and enjoy the view of the glacier. Now, if they stop and rest at this kiosk, people think, why did the park put a kiosk here? Because it looks out at some shrubs. And there's no glacier within view anymore.
The way we solve big problems like this is not all at once. There's a thing called the Sokolov's wedges, and you just take a little bite of the pie, one sliver at a time. So we try to do incremental changes.
When we talk to people about our concerns about climate change, about the changes that are happening to the glacier, we also want to leave them with some idea of what we're doing to mitigate some of the effects of climate change. For example, here at the park, as we retire vehicles out of our fleet, we try to replace them with electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. We've done things like at the Glacier Nature Center, helping to sort of experiment and install a cutting-edge fuel cell as opposed to running some traditional power source out there that relies on some sort of more greenhouse-producing gas.
My main hope for the future is that people get the message that the planet is changing fairly rapidly in places, particularly places like Kenai Fjords National Park, and that it is, we think, there's good evidence it's a result of atmospheric changes, which are measured in terms of human inputs into the atmosphere.
The rapid rate at which these glaciers are changing now offers us the opportunity to talk about this place as a way of looking into the future. In a lot of parts of the country, climate change issues are a little more subtle, and we can point here and say, look how fast this is changing. This is what the future holds for perhaps a lot of us and a lot of the planet as climate continues to change.
I'm optimistic that people and nature will adapt to change, but my expectation is that change will occur. Time will tell.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Sea ice analysis going back to the 22nd. This is what it looked like, and then looking at the change that occurs from the 22nd to today, the 25th. And you can see back here, Nunivak Island on up to the north there, quite a increase there of the solider ice. So new ice forming inside the main ice areas here, and over here toward Mackenzie River Bay, that looks like it's kind of making it a little bit of a jog down to the south. Otherwise, a little bit of a melt back right in this area, and that remaining off the coast. But up to the north, definitely new ice building and spreading southward here to the Russian Far East coastline. And the coastal water forecasts, small cloud advisories on the south coast, easterlies 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 7 feet, northeast at 20 knots on the north coast. And small craft advisories, Lynn Canal, northerlies 25 knots, seas 5 feet, variable at 15 with 3-foot seas there for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait southeast 15. And for Monday, west or west-northwest winds along the outer coastline had about 20 knots with 6 to 10-foot seas, north 20 for Lynn Canal, variable 15, Stevens Passage, northwest winds 20 for Clarence Strait. Cook Inlet, north winds 15 knots, seas 3 feet. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay, northwesterlies 25 to 30 knots, seas up to 10 feet. And small craft advisories there, eastern North Gulf Coast around Middleton Island, northerlies at 25 knots. Prince William Sound, north winds 20 knots, seas 4 feet. And Monday, just a light breeze there for Prince William Sound out of the north at 10 knots. North Gulf Coast, northwesterlies 15 to 20 knots, seas 5 feet. North 15 knots for Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay. Small craft advisories for the Barren Islands, west winds at 25 knots and seas around 10 feet or less. Kodiak Island, small craft advisories, west-northwesterlies 25 knots, 6 to 8 foot seas. Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, northwesterlies 25 knots, seas 7 feet. Northwest 20 knots on the Bering Sea side of the Alaska Peninsula, Bristol Bay, northwest at 15 with 3-foot seas. And for Monday, 30-knot winds, pretty common there for the Alaska Peninsula and Bristol Bay. For Bristol Bay out of the east and the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, southeast 30 knots. Otherwise, Cape Saratchev to Sitkinak, southwest 30 knots, southwest 25, east side of Kodiak Island. On Alaska Island, northwest 20 to 30 knots, and then southeast 40. Gale warnings, Atka all the way to Shimia. Southeast winds 40 knots, seas 9 to 12 feet. And they swing around to the west, 35 to 40 knots. On Monday, northwest 35 to 40 for the western Aleutians, and gale warnings for the Fox Islands, west-northwest 30 to 40 knots. Southwest coast, northwest 20 to 25 knots tomorrow, west 15 St. Lawrence Island, west 15 St. Matthew Island, northwest 20 for the Pribilof, sea 7 feet. And for Monday, northeast winds 40 knots for the Pribilofs, east at 30 for the area south of Nunivak Island, and small craft advisories along the Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 25. Light southeast winds, Norton Sound, and northeast Norton Sound, southeast St. Lawrence Island, only 10 knots. Variable winds 10 to 15 knots, eastern Beaufort Sea coast, southeast 10 to 15 for the central and west side, and 10 to 15 knot winds from Wales to Cape Thompson. And for Monday, Wales to Cape Thompson, southeast at 10, south 10 on the western Arctic coast, central and east side, variable to east at 10 to 15 knots, or call it 5 to 15. And for tonight, high pressure and over the interior there makes for dry conditions, light winds with a fair amount of clearing, but lingering snow showers to the east and to the west. And some of that slides on down to the Fox Islands, Alaska Peninsula. Next storm bringing increasing wind and rain into the western Aleutians, spreading in toward Adak, but that's going to hold off till tomorrow. Then you get into the wind and rain there for Adak and Atka, and high pressure shifts eastward there, so pretty good for the eastern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, Fox Islands area. A couple of troughs keep it kind of unsettled, mostly cloudy up to the west and northwest, and lingering snow showers over toward the eastern border, eastern Alaska Range. Still kind of showery there over the Panhandle, but nothing too heavy, and showers threats continue due to the low near the Queen Charlotte's on Monday down that way. Otherwise, mostly sunny and dry. Much of the interior. Weak trough brings some light snow flurries or showers into the northwest part of the state to the central Arctic coast. Wind and rain with the next system spread into Bristol Bay, the Alaska Peninsula, heading toward Kodiak Island.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.